At my daughter's wedding, I watched another man walk her down the aisle. I was sitting in the last row, 3 seats from the exit, wearing the gray suit she once told me made me look like a retired bus driver. The man beside her wore a white dinner jacket and the calm smile of someone who had rehearsed being important. His name was Charles Whitmore. I had never met him. When the music stopped, the officiant looked at him and asked the question everyone expected. "Who gives this woman to be married?" Charles placed one hand over my daughter's fingers. Then he looked directly at the groom and said, "Her father does." My daughter, Audrey, did not correct him. She smiled beneath a cathedral-length veil while 200 guests rose around me. I remained seated because my knees had forgotten what they were supposed to do. The wedding program rested open in my lap. Under the heading Family of the Bride, it listed Charles Whitmore as Audrey's father. Beneath his name was a paragraph describing how he had raised her after she lost both parents as a teenager. I touched the printed words with my thumb. Both parents. Audrey's mother had been dead for 22 years. I had eaten breakfast that morning. I had not crashed the wedding. I had not followed Audrey there, demanded an invitation, or asked anyone to choose sides. The groom's mother had invited me herself. She simply had not known who I was. Her name was Vivian Hale. She sat in the front row wearing a dark blue dress and a silver pin shaped like an open door. As Charles guided Audrey toward the altar, Vivian turned to glance at the guests. Her eyes passed over me. Then returned. The color left her face. She whispered something to her husband. He looked back too. Vivian stood halfway, one hand gripping the pew. "Mr. Carter?" Audrey heard her. She turned. For the first time that day, my daughter looked directly at me. The smile vanished from her face. Charles followed her gaze. The groom, Nathan, looked from Audrey to Vivian and finally toward the old man sitting alone in the last row. No one interrupted the ceremony. That would have been easier. Instead, Audrey turned back toward the altar and married Nathan while all 4 of us carried different versions of the truth through every vow. At the reception, Charles gave the father of the bride speech. He described Audrey as the daughter he had chosen and the greatest gift life had given him. The guests applauded. I stood near the service doors holding a glass of water I never drank. Then Charles said something that made the room tilt beneath me. When Audrey was 17, the people who should have protected her disappeared. She built herself from nothing. Audrey lowered her eyes with perfect modesty. Nathan reached for her hand. Vivian did not applaud. A waiter touched my elbow and said the bride wanted to speak with me. He led me through the kitchen to a narrow service corridor that smelled of coffee, flowers, and hot metal. Audrey was waiting beside a stack of folded tablecloths. She had removed her veil. Without it, she looked less like a bride and more like the angry 17-year-old I remembered from our last year under the same roof. "What are you doing here?" Vivian invited me. "She doesn't know you." "She did once." Audrey stared at me. "How?" "She came through the garage program when she was 17. Before you were born." Audrey closed her eyes. It was the expression she used whenever a problem had become more complicated than she believed it deserved to be. "You need to leave. You told your husband I was dead. This is not the place. You selected the place." Her voice dropped. "I told Nathan my father was gone. That is not the same thing. It is when the wedding program gives me a funeral." She looked toward the ballroom doors. "Charles was there for me when you weren't. He paid attention. He helped me build a career. He never made me feel guilty for wanting a life outside that garage. I never asked you to stay. No. You only made leaving feel like betrayal." That sentence hurt because part of it was true. But truth can be used dishonestly when it is placed beside a larger lie. "Does Nathan know I am alive?" Audrey did not answer. That was answer enough. "I came because Vivian invited me. I sat in the back. I did not speak. I will leave because you asked." She exhaled. "Thank you. But you and I are going to discuss this. Not today. Soon." I turned toward the exit. Audrey stopped me. "Dad?" It was the first time she had called me that in 9 years. I looked back. Her face softened for half a second. Then the doors opened and Nathan stepped into the corridor. He looked at me. Then at Audrey. "Who is this?" Audrey's eyes closed again. Before she could answer, Vivian appeared behind him. She walked directly toward me. Her hands were shaking. "William Carter?" "Yes. You and Eleanor ran Second Start." "We still do." Her expression changed. "Still?" Nathan looked at his mother. "What is Second Start?" Vivian did not take her eyes off me. "It is the program that kept me from sleeping in a bus station when I was 17. Then she turned toward Audrey. "And according to the $8 million proposal you gave my foundation, it is the program you founded after both your parents died." Nathan took one step away from his new wife. Audrey's face went completely still. That was the moment I understood the wedding was only the first lie I had walked into. "My name is William Carter. I was 69 years old when my daughter introduced another man as her father. For most of my life, I repaired cars. For the second half of it, I also repaired the kind of damage that never appeared on an invoice." Carter Auto sat on the corner of Madison and 8th in a brick building with 3 service bays and a roof that leaked whenever the rain arrived sideways. My father opened it in 1958. I took over at 24. My wife, Eleanor, turned it into something larger without changing the sign. Eleanor had been a school counselor. She believed most teenagers described as difficult were simply carrying problems adults had refused to name. In 1982, she brought a 16-year-old boy named Darnell to the garage and asked whether I could teach him to change oil. "He was suspended again," she said. "For what?" "He told the assistant principal to perform an anatomically ambitious act." "That sounds difficult." "He also rebuilt a lawnmower from parts." "That sounds useful." Darnell lasted 3 days before calling me an old tyrant. I was 31. He returned on the 4th day because Eleanor had packed his lunch and because he had nowhere else to go. By the end of the summer, he could rebuild a carburetor. By the end of the year, he had returned to school. He became the first young person in what Eleanor named Second Start. There were no grants then. No brochures. No professional photographs of smiling teenagers holding tools. There was only a folding table, 2 used uniforms, and Eleanor's rule that no one was allowed to call a young person hopeless while standing in her building. Vivian arrived in 1985. She was 17, living in foster care, and carrying all her belongings in a grocery bag because the zipper on her suitcase had broken. Her foster placement ended after an argument. The social worker needed one night to arrange somewhere else. Eleanor made up the small office cot. I told Vivian she could sleep there only if she promised not to steal the radio. She told me the radio was older than she was and not worth the effort. The next morning, she repaired the broken zipper on her grocery bag with safety wire from my workbench. Eleanor watched her and whispered, "She is going to run something someday." Vivian eventually studied accounting, built a shipping company with her husband, and created the Hale Family Foundation. We lost touch before Audrey was born. I knew she had become successful because Eleanor kept newspaper clippings in a drawer. I did not know Vivian had spent years trying to find us. Audrey grew up at Carter Auto. Her crib once stood in the parts office because Eleanor refused to stop working and I refused to admit I was frightened of being alone with a baby. At 5, Audrey could identify a socket wrench faster than most adults. At 9, she redesigned our handwritten flyers because she said they looked like ransom notes. She did not love engines. She loved presentation. She arranged tools by color, painted signs for fundraising dinners, and turned every graduation ceremony into an event with ribbons, music, and place cards. Eleanor said Audrey could make a folding chair feel invited. For years, I believed our family was happy because we were always busy. That is a mistake active families often make. Movement can hide distance until something forces everyone to stand still. Eleanor became ill when Audrey was 15. The doctors called it an aggressive cancer. Eleanor called it rude. She continued working until the treatments made walking across the garage feel like crossing a field. Audrey became organized in the way frightened children sometimes do. She tracked medications, prepared meals, answered telephone calls, and corrected anyone who used the phrase terminal in our house. I spent longer hours at the garage because broken engines made sense. That was my first failure. Not leaving. Not shouting. Simply allowing usefulness to become the place I hid from my wife and daughter. Eleanor died 7 months before Audrey's 17th birthday. After the funeral, the house became quiet and the garage became crowded. I chose the crowded place. Audrey had qualified for the state debate final that spring. She gave me the date 3 times. I wrote it on the refrigerator. I promised I would be there. That morning, one of our apprentices, Jonah Reed, disappeared before a certification exam. Jonah had been sleeping on a cousin's floor and believed failing the exam meant losing the only job offer he had. We found him at a bus depot 2 towns away. By the time I returned, Audrey's debate had ended. She won. Charles Whitmore, who sponsored the competition, presented her trophy. The photograph appeared in the local paper. Audrey stood beside him smiling while the chair reserved for me remained empty. When I reached home, her trophy was on the kitchen table. She was sitting in the dark. "I am sorry. You always are." Jonah was in trouble. So was I. I told her that was different. It was one of the worst sentences I ever gave my daughter. What I meant was that Jonah's trouble was immediate and visible. What Audrey heard was that her pain was less important because she knew how to sit quietly inside it. Charles offered Audrey an internship after graduation. He ran Whitmore Events, a national company known for charity galas, political dinners, and weddings that appeared in magazines. I distrusted him immediately because his shoes cost more than my first truck. Audrey said that was not a character flaw. I said it was at least a warning light. She left for New York 2 weeks after graduation. I helped load her boxes. Neither of us knew how to say goodbye without making it sound like an accusation. For the first few years, we spoke every Sunday. Then every month. Then on birthdays, holidays, and the days when one of us felt guilty enough to dial. Our conversations became careful summaries of lives neither of us had witnessed. Audrey built a successful career. She changed her professional name from Audrey Carter to Audrey Ellison, using Eleanor's maiden name. I pretended not to mind. She pretended it was only branding. I met Nathan once before the wedding. At least, I believed I had. 3 years earlier, Audrey brought a man to the garage and introduced him as a client interested in youth programs. He asked intelligent questions and helped an apprentice push a stalled car without worrying about his suit. His name was Nate. I did not know Nate was Nathan Hale. I did not know he and Audrey were already dating. She told him I was the garage manager. When I later asked whether she was seeing anyone, Audrey said her personal life was complicated. She had begun building 2 separate worlds. I was simply too grateful for the small doorway she left open to notice I had never been invited through it. The morning after the wedding, Vivian arrived at Carter Auto before 8. She stepped from a black car wearing yesterday's exhaustion and carrying a leather folder against her chest. I was already beneath a delivery van replacing a fuel line. My current apprentice, Tessa Morgan, leaned into the service bay. "Mr. Carter, there is a rich-looking woman asking for you." "How rich?" "She has a driver and shoes that do not believe in puddles." I slid out from beneath the van. Vivian stared at me for several seconds. Then she hugged me. I was holding a wrench and had grease across one shoulder. She did not seem to care. "You are alive." "I have been trying to maintain that condition." "Why did Audrey tell us you died?" "I was hoping you knew." We sat in the office where she had once slept on a cot. The cot was gone. The radio she had insulted still sat on the shelf. Vivian noticed it and laughed once before her expression became serious again. She opened the leather folder. Inside was Audrey's proposal to the Hale Family Foundation. The cover showed Audrey standing in front of a modern glass building beneath the title Open Door National Initiative. The proposal requested $8 million to establish 6 youth employment centers. It described Audrey as the founder of Second Start, a program she supposedly created at 19 after losing both parents and surviving housing insecurity. I read the sentence twice. Housing insecurity? She claims she slept in an office behind a garage for several months. That was you. Vivian nodded. The proposal contained the story of the broken suitcase zipper, the old radio, and the night Eleanor made up the office cot. Audrey had changed the grocery bag to a suitcase and Vivian's age from 17 to 19. Everything else belonged to the woman sitting across from me. She used my story to ask me for money, Vivian said. She could not have known it was yours. That does not improve it. The next section contained photographs of former apprentices. Some were teenagers in the pictures and middle-aged adults now. Their stories had been rewritten in Audrey's voice. She described herself finding them, training them, and building Second Start from nothing. At the bottom of one page was a photograph of Eleanor holding a clipboard. The caption identified her as an early volunteer. My wife had named the program. She had recruited the first apprentices, argued with school boards, found housing, and spent evenings helping young people complete applications at our kitchen table. In Audrey's proposal, Eleanor had become a volunteer in her own life. Then Vivian showed me the final page. It listed Carter Auto as the initiative's original legacy site. The property was described as available for transfer after grant approval. A box beside my name contained one word: deceased. I never agreed to transfer the garage. Did you agree to license the Second Start name? No. Did the people in these photographs approve their stories? I doubt anyone asked. Vivian closed the folder. The grant is frozen. I have called an emergency board review for Friday. Audrey has 72 hours to explain every claim. I do not want to destroy my daughter. Vivian looked at me for a long moment. Then do not. But do not confuse preventing destruction with preventing consequences. It was something Eleanor might have said. That made it harder to ignore. Audrey arrived at noon. Nathan came with her. So did a lawyer carrying a document case and the expression of a man billing by the minute. Audrey had changed from her wedding dress into a cream suit. Her hair was still pinned from the ceremony. Nathan looked as though he had not slept. His wedding ring caught the fluorescent light whenever he moved his hand. The lawyer introduced himself as Martin Sloan. He placed 2 documents on my desk. One was a confidentiality agreement. The other was titled Historical Founder Acknowledgement. According to the acknowledgement, Audrey had designed Second Start as a teenager, while Eleanor and I had provided informal space and supervision. It transferred the program name, training materials, photographs, and public history to Audrey's foundation. It also gave her the right to negotiate for the future use of the garage. I am not signing this. Audrey folded her arms. Read it first. I reached the part where your mother becomes informal supervision. Nathan looked at the page. Audrey, you told me your parents died before you started the program. I told you the people I needed were gone. You showed me an obituary. My mother's obituary. You let me believe it was for both of them. Audrey turned toward him. I was going to explain. When? After the foundation decision. After our wedding? This has nothing to do with us. You introduced another man as your father during our vows. The lawyer cleared his throat. This conversation is becoming unproductive. It began with my funeral, I said. Productivity was always unlikely. Audrey looked at me. Second Start would not exist in a form anyone cares about without me. You made flyers when you were 9. I created the donor events. I built the visual identity. I brought Charles in. I turned a neighborhood garage project into something scalable. You left at 18. Because there was no place for me unless I needed fixing. That is not true. You missed my debate final because another kid needed you. You left me alone after Mom died because the garage was easier. You called every ambition I had shallow because it did not smell like motor oil. Nathan looked at me. I could have defended myself. Instead, I said, I did miss the debate. I did hide at work after Eleanor died. And I treated Audrey's talent as decoration because I did not understand it. Audrey's expression shifted. She had not expected agreement. Then I continued. But I did not abandon you. I did not die. You did not create Second Start. And pain does not give you ownership of every person who was helped here. Audrey's eyes filled. You always choose them. This is not a choice between you and them. It always is. Nathan stepped closer to her. Did Charles know your father was alive? Audrey said nothing. Nathan looked at me. Did you know she and I were together when I visited 3 years ago? No. He turned back to Audrey. You introduced him as the manager. I was trying to see whether the program could work nationally. You were testing whether I would recognize your own father. Audrey gathered the documents. If you refuse to sign, the grant disappears. Then correct the proposal. It is not that simple. Truth becomes complicated when it arrives after the budget. Her face hardened. You think this is about money? I think $8 million has become unusually interested in our family history. Audrey walked out. The lawyer followed. Nathan remained in the office for several seconds. He looked at Eleanor's photograph beside my desk. I did not know. I believe you. I married her yesterday. I know. What am I supposed to do? I am the man your wife declared dead. I may not be the best person to give marriage advice this morning. He almost smiled. Then he left. That afternoon, I opened the locked archive cabinet behind the office. Eleanor had organized 30 years of Second Start records in labeled boxes. Intake forms. Graduation photographs. Consent letters. Handwritten notes from young people who had passed through the garage. 3 boxes were missing. The missing years matched the photographs and stories in Audrey's proposal. Only 4 people had ever carried a key to that cabinet. Eleanor. Me. Our longtime foreman, Louise. And Audrey. The wedding lie had been planned for months. The grant lie had been planned for years. Charles Whitmore came to the garage the following morning. He arrived without a driver, without his white dinner jacket, and without the confidence he had worn during the wedding speech. He stood just inside the first service bay while an impact wrench rattled in the distance. You must be William. You must be my replacement. He accepted the sentence without becoming defensive. That surprised me. I owe you an apology. You owe several people an explanation first. We went into the office. Charles remained standing until I pointed toward a chair. He sat beneath a photograph of Eleanor teaching Vivian to complete a job application. Audrey told me you left after her mother died. Left where? She never said. She said you became unpredictable and that she slept in friends' homes because she was afraid to return. I looked at him. Did you believe her? Yes. Why? Because she was 17 when I met her. She was brilliant and angry and determined never to need anyone. I had seen that before. Charles rubbed his hands together. I offered her an internship after the debate final. She told me no one had come for her. I saw the empty chair. I made conclusions that felt compassionate. They were convenient for you too. He looked up. Yes. She was talented. I liked being the person who recognized it. For the first time, I understood why Audrey chose Charles. He offered admiration without history. I offered history without enough admiration. Charles placed his phone on my desk. He opened an email Audrey had sent 6 weeks before the wedding. The subject line read "Father of the Bride notes." The message contained suggested memories for his speech. Teaching her to drive. Waiting outside college interviews. helping her survive the first anniversary of Eleanor's death. Those events had happened. They had happened with me. Audrey had taken pieces of our life and reassigned the roles. Charles scrolled farther. Near the bottom, Audrey had written, "If anyone asks about William Carter, say he disappeared after my mother died and that I do not discuss him." Charles locked the phone. "I will correct the record publicly." "Not yet." He frowned. "She used me to lie about you. She used you because you wanted to rescue her. That does not make you innocent." "I know. But it does mean your anger should not decide what happens next." Charles studied me. "You are protecting her. I am trying not to punish her before I understand everything. Is there a difference? I hope so." He copied the emails to a drive and left it on my desk. Before leaving, he stopped beside the service bay. Tessa was teaching a younger apprentice how to test a battery. Charles watched for a moment. "She said this place was chaos." "It is. She said no one here ever saw her." "That may also be true." Charles looked back at me. Two things can be true without becoming the same thing. Then he left. By noon, Audrey had posted a statement online. It appeared first on her professional page and then everywhere else. The statement began, "Yesterday, an estranged relative entered my wedding without permission and attempted to exploit a private family history for attention. She did not use my name. She did not need to." A photograph showed me sitting in the last row. Another showed Vivian speaking to me in the corridor. The caption described me as a man who had repeatedly harassed Audrey after abandoning her in adolescence. The first reporter called within 20 minutes. The second arrived at the garage with a camera. By evening, strangers had found our telephone number. Some called me a fraud. Others called me things that lacked imagination but contained enthusiasm. Two parents withdrew their children from Second Start. A local dealership postponed its equipment donation. A church canceled a fundraising breakfast because the pastor did not want controversy in the fellowship hall. Tessa found me taking down the garage's phone receiver after the 10th abusive call. She was 17, sharp-eyed, and suspicious of adults who use the word opportunity too often. She had entered Second Start 6 months earlier after leaving 3 foster placements and 1 school. "Are we closing?" "No. You said that too quickly. We are not closing today." "That is not the same answer." I sat on the edge of the desk. Some money may stop coming. Then we use less. Some people may decide they do not trust me. "Did you do what she said?" "No." "Did you do something else?" The question surprised me. "What do you mean?" People usually lie around something true. Tessa had learned that lesson younger than anyone should. I missed things that mattered to Audrey. I worked when I should have been home. I made her feel selfish for wanting more than this place. "Did you tell everyone you were her dad at the wedding?" "No." "Did you use her stories to get money?" "No." Then being a bad dad sometimes does not make her good at lying. She returned to the service bay. I remained beside the desk, wondering when the youngest person in the building had become the clearest. Nathan came that evening. He parked across the street and waited until the reporters left. When he entered, his tie was missing and the top button of his shirt was open. He looked less like a groom than a man who had discovered the wedding continued after the guests went home. "Is Audrey with you?" "No. I am staying at my mother's house." "You have been married 2 days." "I have known my wife for 5 years and met her yesterday." Nathan placed a printed copy of the grant proposal on the workbench. Several passages were marked in red. "I helped edit this. I believed the stories were hers. I believed you were dead." He pointed to a testimonial from a former apprentice named Marcus Lee. The proposal said Audrey found Marcus sleeping in an abandoned car and personally trained him until he became a certified mechanic. "Marcus was 23 when Audrey left for New York," I said. "Eleanor found him." "Did Audrey interview him?" "She called last year and said she was making a documentary about her mother." Nathan closed his eyes. She collected these stories under false reasons. Yes. Why did you not stop her earlier? I did not know. How did you not know your own program was being used? The question was fair. I did not follow her work closely. Why? Because every article about her reminded me she had built a life that did not include me. And because pretending not to care felt safer than discovering how little she wanted me there. Nathan looked around the garage. I asked her once why she never brought me home. She said there was nothing left. There was always something left. I know that now. He reached into his coat and handed me a small silver key. It was the key to Audrey's archive cabinet. I recognized the blue plastic tag Eleanor had attached when Audrey was 12. I found it in a box at our apartment. There were scanned records, photographs, and drafts going back 6 years. Did she take the original boxes? I do not know. She is not answering me. Nathan placed both hands on the workbench. I love her. I believe you. That does not feel useful. Love rarely becomes useful on command. He looked at me. Did she have reasons to hate you? Yes. Reasons to fear you? I thought about the worst night between us. Audrey was 21 and had stopped returning my calls for almost 4 months. I drove to New York without warning. When she refused to open her apartment door, I knocked until a neighbor called the police. I shouted through the door that she could not erase her family. There were no threats. No violence. But there was an old man using love as permission to ignore a locked door. I frightened her once. Nathan waited. I told him the whole story. When I finished, he nodded slowly. She showed me the police report. I assumed it proved everything else. It proves I was wrong that night. It does not prove I abandoned her. Nathan looked toward Eleanor's photograph. Tomorrow, Audrey is doing a live interview. She says she is finally telling the full story. Will you appear? No. Why? Because she wants a public fight. If I give her one, the truth becomes whichever person performs pain better. Nathan studied me. I do not know which of you I am supposed to believe. Do not believe either of us because we are family. Read the records. Ask the people whose names she used. And decide what you can live beside. He left the silver key on the workbench and walked out. Audrey's interview began at 7 the next evening. She sat in a softly lit studio wearing white and pale blue. The host described her as a bride forced to confront family trauma on the happiest day of her life. Audrey spoke calmly. She said I had always cared more about troubled teenagers than my own daughter. She described waiting alone after the debate final. She described the months after Eleanor died, when I worked late and left frozen dinners in the refrigerator. She described the night I arrived at her apartment and refused to leave. Every event was real. That was why the interview was effective. Audrey had placed genuine pain around the false claim that I disappeared. The truth became a fence protecting the lie. Then the host asked about Second Start. Audrey smiled sadly. She said the original Garage program had been an informal effort without structure. She claimed she developed its educational model, built its donor network, and preserved it after I lost interest. Behind her, photographs appeared on a screen. Eleanor. Marcus. Vivian. Young people whose lives had become scenery in my daughter's defense. Tessa watched from the office doorway. When the interview ended, she turned toward me. Are you going to answer? I do not know. That means no. It means I do not want to turn my daughter into an enemy. Tessa crossed her arms. She already turned us into characters. You can be sorry for hurting her and still not let her take our names. The sentence stayed with me after everyone went home. I walked through the empty service bays and looked at the photographs on the walls. Darnell holding his first certification. Vivian beside the old radio. Marcus with Eleanor at his graduation. Audrey at 9, standing on a chair while hanging paper stars for the first fundraiser. My daughter was part of Second Start's history. She had helped. She had contributed ideas I had dismissed too quickly. But being overlooked did not make her the only person who had existed. The next morning, I called Marcus Lee. Then Darnell. Then 6 others whose stories appeared in the proposal. I did not ask them to defend me. I asked whether Audrey had permission to use their names. None of them had given it. 3 believed they had been interviewed for a documentary about Eleanor. 2 had never spoken to Audrey at all. 1 story belonged to a man who had died before the proposal was written. Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I spent half my life trying not to be introduced as the boy who slept in a car. She put it in a grant brochure? Yes. Then I will be at the board meeting." By Thursday evening, 9 former apprentices had agreed to speak. Charles provided the emails. Nathan provided document history showing Audrey had copied language from old records and rewritten dates. Vivian found her original intake card in the Foundation's private archive. I had enough evidence to end Audrey's proposal. I still did not know whether I had enough courage to sit across from my daughter while it happened. She came to the garage that night. It was after 10. Rain tapped against the service doors, and I was alone at the workbench repairing the radio Vivian once refused to steal. Audrey stood beneath the baylight without an umbrella. Her hair was wet. She looked exhausted and younger than she had at the wedding. "Nathan left me. He is staying with Vivian. He says he needs time." "That sounds reasonable. I did not come for your judgment. Then you chose the wrong garage." She almost laughed. Then she saw the old radio. "Mom kept that thing?" She said it still worked. "It does not." She was optimistic. Audrey touched one of the photographs on the wall. It showed her at 12 beside a table she had decorated for a scholarship dinner. "You used the signs I made for 15 years. "Yes." "You never told anyone I designed them." "No." "You laughed when I said the program needed a real brand." "I did." "You called my work pretty paper." "I remember." Her eyes filled. "You want everyone to believe I stole this place because I was greedy. I think you stole it because you spent years feeling erased and decided erasing everyone else would finally make you visible." Audrey stared at me. "That sounds like something Mom would say. She would have said it better." She walked toward the office. "I built a company from nothing." "I know. I created jobs." "I know. I made Charles see me when you did not." "I know." "Stop agreeing with me. You spent years wanting me to listen." "I am trying." Audrey wiped her face angrily. "The world does not fund complicated daughters. It funds founders. It funds clean stories. A dead father and a brave teenager make sense in a proposal. A living mechanic who missed the debate but paid the tuition does not." "So you buried me because I was inconvenient." "I removed confusion. That is what people call a lie after adding a budget." She looked at the service bays. "With $8 million, we could help thousands. We could build safe housing, training centers, national partnerships. You are willing to destroy that because the brochure did not give you enough credit." "This is not about my credit. It is about Marcus having the right not to be introduced forever by the worst night of his life. It is about Vivian owning her own story. It is about your mother not becoming a volunteer because her existence complicates your biography." Audrey's voice became quiet. "If I correct everything, the grant disappears. Maybe. My company could collapse. Maybe. Nathan may leave permanently. He will decide that." "What do you want me to do?" "Tell the board the truth. Apologize to the people whose stories you used. Return the archive. And tell your husband who he married." She looked at me with the same expression she had worn at 17. "If I do that, everything falls apart." Then it was not standing. Audrey moved toward the door. Before leaving, she turned. "You are choosing the garage again." "No. I am choosing not to let either of us use the garage to avoid the truth again." She opened the door. "I will never forgive you for tomorrow." I held the old radio between my hands. You do not have to forgive me before I do what is right. The Hale Foundation board met Friday morning in a conference room overlooking the river. There were 14 board members, 3 attorneys, 2 independent reviewers, and a long table polished enough to reflect everyone's discomfort. Audrey arrived with Martin Sloan and 2 members of her company. She wore navy blue and carried no notes. Nathan sat beside Vivian on the opposite side of the room. Charles sat alone near the windows. I took a seat beside Marcus and Darnell. Tessa had asked to attend. I told her the meeting was not entertainment. She said that was exactly why someone from the current program should be present. Vivian agreed. Audrey spoke first. She described the conflict as a dispute over language and credit. She acknowledged that some dates had been simplified for storytelling clarity. She said Second Start had existed informally before her leadership but lacked a model capable of national growth. Then Martin Sloan distributed the old police report for my visit to Audrey's apartment. Audrey told the board that my current objections were part of a long pattern of control. She said I became possessive whenever she succeeded outside my influence. The room shifted. Not toward her completely, but enough for doubt to enter. Audrey had always understood that people did not need to believe every word. They only needed to become tired of deciding. Vivian asked whether I wished to respond. I stood. My hands were shaking, so I placed them flat against the table. The police report is real. Audrey looked up sharply. When my daughter was 21, I went to her apartment without invitation. She refused to let me in. I continued knocking and raised my voice until a neighbor called the police. I believed being her father gave me the right to force a conversation. It did not. I frightened her. I am sorry. Audrey's face changed. Again, she had prepared for denial. Agreement gave her nowhere to push. I also missed her state debate final. I disappeared into my work after her mother died. I made Audrey believe the young people who needed obvious rescue mattered more than the daughter who knew how to function while grieving. I looked directly at her. She has reasons to be angry with me. She has reasons not to trust my version of our family. But she does not have the right to declare living people dead, take their histories, or use private pain as evidence that she founded something she did not create. I sat down. The room remained quiet. Then Vivian opened a small archival box. She removed a yellowed intake card dated June 19, 1985. Her 17-year-old handwriting filled the form. At the bottom were Eleanor's signature and mine. Vivian read the passage from Audrey's proposal about the broken suitcase zipper in the office cot. Then she read her original intake notes. The details matched almost word for word. "This is my childhood," Vivian said. "I did not give Audrey permission to use it. She did not know it belonged to me. That means she was willing to take the story from someone she believed would never enter the room." Marcus spoke next. He was 51 now, broad-shouldered, and still uncomfortable in formal rooms. He held up the brochure containing his photograph. "I did sleep in a car. For 12 nights. I told Audrey because she said she was honoring Eleanor. I did not tell her so rich people could feel inspired while deciding whether I deserved a future." Darnell testified. Then 2 others. Each person described where Audrey's proposal had changed names, dates, and relationships to place her at the center. Charles rose from his chair. He gave the board copies of Audrey's speech instructions and emails. He admitted he had accepted the role of father without asking enough questions because being needed flattered him. "I was not aware William Carter was alive. I was not aware the memories in my speech belonged to him. I participated in a lie because I believed I was participating in a rescue." Nathan spoke last. He placed document histories on the table showing that Audrey had begun rewriting the Second Start archive before she met him. He did not look at her while he spoke. "I believed my wife's father was dead. I believed Charles raised her. I believed these stories were hers. I helped edit the proposal based on those beliefs. They were false." Audrey stood. Her chair struck the wall behind her. "So that is it? You are all going to decide he is the honest one because he admitted to a few mistakes?" She pointed toward me. "He built a family out of strangers because he did not know how to love the one child living in his house. He taught every person in that garage to speak, and he never once asked what silence was doing to me." No one interrupted. Audrey's voice broke. "I took this program because it was the only inheritance I had. Not money. Not property. A story in which I mattered." I stood again. "You mattered before the proposal. You mattered when I failed you. You mattered while I was too proud to understand why you left. But mattering does not require everyone else to disappear." Audrey looked toward Tessa. Perhaps she saw the easiest person in the room to dismiss. A teenager in a borrowed blazer sitting among attorneys and executives. "You think he sees you?" Audrey asked her. "He needs you to prove he is a good man." Tessa remained seated. "He has never called himself my father. He taught me to repair brakes, made me finish schoolwork, and sent me home to my aunt when I tried to sleep in the office. He helps me. He does not own what happened to me." She looked at the proposal. "You are the one who turned help into ownership." Audrey sat down. The board withdrew the grant proposal from consideration. It also referred the unauthorized use of personal stories and photographs to an independent legal review. Vivian announced that the foundation would consider supporting Second Start directly, but only under a new board that included former and current participants. No one applauded. This was not a victory ceremony. It was a room full of people measuring what truth had cost after arriving late. Audrey walked toward the door. Nathan stood, but she did not look at him. She passed me without speaking. Then stopped beside Charles. "You said I was your daughter." Charles looked devastated. "I said what you asked me to say. That is not the same thing." "No. It is not." Audrey left. The door closed softly behind her. For some reason, that sound reminded me of the brass lock on her apartment 27 years earlier. Once again, my daughter was on the other side of a door. This time, I did not follow her. The weeks after the board meeting were difficult. Audrey's company lost 3 major clients. Open Door National Initiative was dissolved before it opened a single center. Charles resigned from its advisory council and issued a public correction about the wedding speech. Nathan moved out of the apartment he shared with Audrey. They remained legally married while deciding whether the marriage had contained enough truth to continue. He never asked me to advise him. I respected him for that. The online anger changed direction as quickly as it had arrived. Strangers who had called me a monster began calling Audrey one instead. I disliked that almost as much. People who knew nothing about us wanted a clean villain because clean villains require no self-examination. I released one statement. It corrected the history of Second Start, acknowledged Audrey's real contributions, and asked the public not to use my daughter's worst choices as entertainment. Several people accused me of protecting her. They were partly right. I was protecting the truth from becoming another weapon. The missing archive boxes were returned by courier 1 month later. There was no note. Every document had been preserved. Audrey had scanned the records but had not destroyed the originals. Inside the final box, I found a folder I did not recognize. It contained Audrey's childhood designs for Second Start. New logos. Fundraising plans. A proposal for a scholarship dinner written when she was 14. Eleanor had saved everything. Across the top of one page, she had written, "Will, do not dismiss this. Audrey sees the part we are missing." I sat alone in the office holding that page until the garage lights switched off automatically. Audrey had lied about founding Second Start. I had lied to myself about how little she had contributed. 2 failures can face each other without becoming equal. Her deception remained hers. My blindness remained mine. 3 months passed before Audrey contacted me. She did not call. She sent a message containing 4 words. "Is the radio working?" I replied, No. It remains optimistic. She came to the garage after closing that evening. There were no reporters. No lawyers. No foundation board. Only Audrey, me, and the old radio opened across the workbench. She placed a thick envelope beside it. Inside were signed corrections for every former apprentice whose stories she had used. She had paid for the photographs to be removed from all promotional materials and created a fund to cover legal expenses for anyone who wanted further action. "This does not fix it," she said. "No. I know." She sat on the stool across from me. Nathan filed for separation. "I am sorry." "Are you?" "I am sorry you are hurting. I will not pretend his decision is unfair." Audrey nodded. Charles stopped answering me. "He may need time. He said he does not know whether he loved me or the person I allowed him to rescue." That sounds painful. It is also a very Charles sentence. Yes. For several minutes, we worked on the radio without speaking. Audrey held the flashlight while I tested a corroded connection. It was the kind of ordinary cooperation families often overlook until it disappears. "I am sorry I said you abandoned me," she said. "I am sorry I made being overlooked feel like being orphaned. I am sorry I buried you while you were alive." I put the screwdriver down. "I am sorry I taught you that attention had to be earned by becoming useful. I am sorry I made strangers' emergencies more visible than your quiet grief. And I am sorry I used your leaving as proof that you did not care, when it was also proof that I had not made home feel safe enough to return." Audrey cried. I did not move toward her immediately. The old version of me would have believed fatherhood gave me the right to decide when comfort should happen. Instead, I waited. After a moment, Audrey reached across the workbench and took my hand. It was not forgiveness. It was permission for one moment of closeness. I treated it as exactly that. Audrey did not return to Second Start as a leader. Vivian's foundation created an independent board with former apprentices, local educators, and 2 current participants. I surrendered the power to make every final decision. That was more difficult than I expected and healthier than I admitted. Audrey offered to help rebuild the program's consent policies and archives. The board agreed under 3 conditions. She would hold no title for 1 year. She would not use the work in her professional marketing. And every story would remain under the control of the person who lived it. Audrey accepted. She spent Thursday evenings scanning consent forms, correcting dates, and calling former participants to ask what they wanted preserved or removed. Some refused to speak with her. She recorded the refusal without complaint. Nathan visited the garage twice during that year. The first time, he and Audrey spoke in the parking lot for 20 minutes. The second time, they walked around the block. They eventually divorced. Not every relationship survives the truth simply because the truth finally arrived. Nathan remained connected to Second Start through the foundation. Audrey found that painful. She also accepted that losing control of a relationship did not give her ownership of everyone inside it. 1 year after the wedding, Second Start held its 40th anniversary ceremony. We used folding chairs in the service bays because Eleanor had always believed expensive venues made donors feel important and participants feel borrowed. Vivian sat in the front row beside the radio she once refused to steal. Marcus brought his grandchildren. Darnell arrived wearing a shirt that said "Old Tyrant" in honor of our first week together. Tessa received her certification and a paid apprenticeship at a city transit garage. Audrey sat in the last row. She had chosen the seat herself. When I saw her there, I remembered the wedding and the gray suit and the program that had printed me out of her life. For a moment, I considered asking her to move forward. Then I understood that redemption was not a seating arrangement I could improve for her. She was present. That was enough for that day. When it was my turn to speak, I stood beside Eleanor's photograph. I had prepared 3 pages. Tessa had crossed out half of them and written "Stop explaining" in the margin. I looked across the service bay. Second Start began because Eleanor Carter believed no one's worst year should become their permanent name. It survived because many people built it. I named Arnell, Vivian, Marcus, Louise. The teachers, foster parents, mechanics, donors, and young people who had changed the program while passing through it. Then I looked toward the last row. And Audrey Carter Ellison taught us something we should have understood from the beginning. Helping someone does not make their story ours. And being part of a history does not give any one person the right to stand at its center. Audrey lowered her eyes. I did not ask her to stand. I did not call the statement forgiveness. I simply placed her real contribution into the real history. After the ceremony, she found me in the office. The old radio was playing softly on the shelf. I had finally repaired it 2 weeks earlier but had not told her. You fixed it. It was only a corroded wire. You spent 4 months on a wire? I was considering its emotional complexity. Audrey smiled. Then she reached into her bag and removed the wedding program. My name was still absent. Charles was still listed as her father. I kept this because I wanted to remember what I was capable of. That sounds heavy. It is. Then do not carry it every day. She placed the program in the metal waste basket. She did not burn it. She did not tear it dramatically. She simply let it go among coffee cups, old receipts, and the ordinary remains of a long day. Dad? Yes? I do not know whether I forgive you for my childhood. I do not know whether I forgive you for the wedding. That seems fair. Can we still have dinner? Yes. Without discussing forgiveness? I can discuss the weather badly. You always have. We went to a small diner 2 streets from the garage. Audrey ordered the same grilled cheese she had eaten after school when she was 10. I did not mention that. Not every memory needs to be used the moment it becomes available. My daughter introduced another man as her father because she believed she needed a cleaner past to build a larger future. She believed my failures allowed her to declare my entire life false. For a while, I believed exposing her lies would make my version of our family complete. Neither of us was right. Audrey had been neglected and loved. I had failed her and remained her father. Charles had supported her and accepted a role that was not his. Second Start had shaped Audrey, and she had helped shape it, without creating it alone. Families often break when one person insists only one of those truths can survive. Repair began when we stopped using pain as proof that everyone else had disappeared. Audrey still works in events. Her company is smaller now. So is the language on its website. Every project page identifies who created the work, who owns the story, and who gave permission for it to be shared. I still run Carter Auto 3 days a week. The new board tells me that retirement is not a personal insult. I remain unconvinced. Tessa calls once a month to complain that the city garage organizes tools incorrectly. Vivian visits every anniversary and still refuses to admit the old radio is worth stealing. Marcus reviews every brochure before it is printed. Audrey comes for dinner on Sundays when she is in town. Sometimes we discuss Eleanor. Sometimes we discuss the years we lost. Sometimes we discuss nothing more important than whether the soup needs salt. Those ordinary evenings have become more valuable to me than dramatic apologies. Apologies name the damage. Ordinary time proves whether people have learned to stop repeating it. The silver open-door pin Vivian wore at the wedding now hangs inside the Second Start office. Beneath it is a small card containing Eleanor's rule. No one is hopeless while standing in this building. Audrey added a second card below it. And no one's story belongs to the person who tells it loudest. The first card belonged to her mother. The second belonged to my daughter. Both names are printed beneath the words. That may sound like a small thing. It is not. Our family nearly destroyed itself because we kept rewriting who had done what, who had suffered more, and who deserved to stand at the center. Now we return the names. We ask before telling. We correct the record when memory becomes convenient. And we understand that loving someone does not give us permission to author their life. At my daughter's wedding, I sat in the last row while another man called himself her father. 1 year later, She sat in the last row while I told the truth about her contribution to the work she had tried to claim. Neither seat was punishment. They were simply the places we occupied while learning that being seen is not the same as standing in front. When we left the diner after that first Sunday meal, Audrey stopped beside my truck. She looked toward the garage lights glowing at the end of the street. Then she asked, "Do you think Mom would recognize us now?" I thought about Eleanor's notes, her rules, and the way she had saved Audrey's designs when I had dismissed them. Yes. Would she be proud? Not yet. Audrey looked offended. Then I smiled. She would say we had made a promising beginning. Audrey laughed. She hugged me before getting into her car. This time, neither of us mistook one embrace for a repaired history. It was only a beginning. But beginnings were what Eleanor had always believed in. That was why she named the program Second Start. Not Second Chance. A chance can be granted by someone standing above you. A start belongs to the person who takes the next step. Audrey started her car. I watched until her taillights disappeared around the corner. Then I walked back toward the garage, where the old radio was still playing and tomorrow's work was waiting.